Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. We're focused on talking to food and beverage brands that are on a mission to make the world better.
Hey, everyone. Duncan here with another episode of the Firebelly Social Show, where we chat with founders and leaders of mission-driven food and beverage brands. And I'm so excited to be here today. We have a great show lined up. You know, what's really interesting about today's show is we're going to feature a guy who's really critical in terms of bringing talent to food and beverage companies, and in turn to founders and leaders. So he's an important piece of the overall big picture. You could call him a linchpin to a lot of people's success, and he's got some great insights. So thank you for tuning in today. Today's episode is brought to you by Firebelly Marketing, a social media marketing communications firm that focuses in on food and beverage companies and mission-driven ones in particular. So if you'd like to know more, go to firebellymarketing.com. So with no further ado, let's welcome Scott Rice from Natural Careers. And let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a boutique recruiter and career transition specialist, so this is a guy that's in demand with a focus in the CPG industry and natural products. I mean, the guy grew up on a farm, for God's sake, and so he experienced ground to fork before anyone even knew what it was called. His platform and portfolio includes working with health, well-being, food and beverage, and ingredient companies, founder-owned, really, really big ones, private equity-funded companies. And he's a Midwesterner. He's from Wisconsin. And so with no further ado, Scott, be so welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Duncan. On Wisconsin and go Pack go, right?
Indeed. We're both commiserating on the lack of good weather around here. It's great to have you. It's great to have you on the show. Let's just start.
Thank you.
How did you start? How did you start Natural Careers?
Well, it started 6 years ago next month. I mean, we were working. My partner Sarah and I were working for a national franchise based out of Chicago, and there was about 200 branches. Each branch had their own specialty. And it just happened to be that I answered an ad, almost 15 years before that, for a recruiting practice that was part of this franchise. And there was one gentleman there doing dietary supplements. And when he looked at my background of growing up on a farm to fork, CSA, he's like, if I was you, I would do food and beverage. And, the rest is history. 15 years of being the top recruiter year over year for this franchise. Ventured off on our own. The main being is we wanted to continue to be a boutique recruiting practice, but we also wanted to set up a career transition consultancy, not only to help clients build people in teams, but to help individuals get jobs.
That's awesome. And so just to make it crystal clear, like I know we talked about some of this in the pre-show, but what makes your company different?
Well, once again, we're a boutique recruiter with our specialty in the CPG natural. Our focus is in natural products. So we work with $1 million to $1 billion companies. The big thing I think is the difference for us is the career transition consultancy, helping individuals, in really helping individuals get jobs, work on their resumes, their LinkedIn profiles. And I think that really helps too, of working with people. And then when our clients come to us looking for operations or finance or sales or marketing, we're working with a lot of these people in every locale in North America.
And I think that I saw, well, first of all, that's amazing. But I saw somewhere on your website the importance of cultural fit, and you just don't see that phrase enough, I feel. Like that's such an important thing.
I think it's, the benefit or the big thing of being a recruiter is there's no special formula. There's no magic potion. It all boils down to hard work of finding that right person. We need to sit down with our clients and we need to take some great notes of who are they looking for? What is their culture like? What do they want it? What type of person are they looking for in terms to coincide with that culture? And the thing I'll tell you is the great news is we just launched a new website about 2 weeks ago. So naturalcareers.com Was an old Shopify site, but we finally ponied up and put some big money towards the website, and we're really, really happy with it. So, thank you.
That is such an amazing story. I love that, and I love that the thought of like helping people with I think you called it career transitions. And what's one of the things that you all do to help people overcome their I don't want to say fear, but maybe their their personality challenges, or any fears that any challenges they impose on themselves?
So I think that we have not gotten more calls in 23 and 24 by executives than we ever have. And that's me being a recruiter for almost 2 decades. Natural Careers is 6 years old, as I mentioned, in February. That's concerning. That's alarming, to us. So what I try to do, no matter what, I'm going to schedule half-hour calls, to an hour call with everybody and anybody. My goal is to help them and put them in a better spot. A lot of people who have been professionals for 15, 20, 30 years, they haven't really worried about their resume. They haven't even worried about their LinkedIn because they've been keeping their head down. They have a job. But a lot of these people that find themselves middle-aged or around it, they're out of a job. And whether they know it or not, their network has shrunk. People have retired, people have moved on. And some of these people find themselves in the spot like, oh my God, what do I do? How? And they put together a resume. Maybe they add on something that they did 10 years ago. Problem is, it's not very good. And it's very indicative if you look at their LinkedIn profiles, which your LinkedIn profile is the most powerful tool that one has in the job market. Okay. That profile works for you 24/7, 365 days a year. It needs to be done in its entirety, and it needs to be done professionally. Okay. And a lot of people there's no coders writing books about LinkedIn and how to do it. So you have to go and lean off consultants like myself. I've even taken it a step level where I hire consultants that specialize in LinkedIn, and they tell me what's new and exciting, so I can bring that on to my customers. But first and foremost, I'm going to help everyone that calls me. Granted, I have the time and how far I schedule out, give them some tips of putting them hopefully in a better spot, help them get found and get a job.
I mean, that's a fabulous approach, I got to tell you, because I mean, thank you for being that way. You're giving your time, you're giving your expertise, and it's clearly coming back to you. And what a way to work to kind of lead by example with the importance of relationships. I know we have Maggie Sadowski in common, so a shout out to her with 8-Track Foods, right?
Yeah,
exactly. That's the second episode in a row that she's actually got a shout out on. Yesterday, I was on with Andrew from another company, and why am I from Good Foods, and it's another bean company, and I gave her a shout out, and she's very much a relationship person as well, so it's cool that we have her in common. But you mentioned the value of LinkedIn, right? What can you share, just maybe a tip or two,
I mean, I can share plenty of tips. Your headline, the information right under your name, that has to be filled out with positions that you're interested in, positions that you're working, or industries that you're in. Okay. The about section, 2,600 characters. I mean, that's a lot of content that can go in there. I mean, LinkedIn is based on algorithms. Those algorithms pull from keywords, right? So those keywords have to be in your profile that are indicative of your industry. Each experience section, 2,000 characters, right? So that's a lot of content, once again, that allows you to be found. I look at it as putting out enough crumbs so people can find you, right? Because if you're going to put a VP of sales or a regional sales or a brand manager, I mean, that puts you in a mass of thousands of other people. So, putting that content in there, specific content, your fingerprint, your story is super, super important.
I love that. I love that. And you said your story, right? And
Mhm.
of course, as SEO, search engine optimization. I remember when I first heard that, I said, "What the hell is that?" But I mean,
Yep.
essentially talking about LinkedIn profile optimization, because if you got nothing else that's going to talk for you on a 24/7 basis, 365 days a year, your LinkedIn profile is, and having the right story,
Yeah.
telling that story in a compelling way. Because you see a lot of like it almost sometimes you see people's profiles, like, is this a dating profile? Like,
True. I think your resume, Duncan, should be your profile. I think your resume should be your profile. If you're going to put together an effective resume, it's going to be a summary, your skills and competencies, your experience, and if applicable, your education. And that's it.
now
All
let
of
me
that stuff can go on to LinkedIn.
now
Keep
let
it
me
simple, keep it sweet, right?
keep it simple, keep it sweet. Okay, I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
That's a great insight. Now, what about premium? Should people, especially people that are like looking to join a new company, maybe they're not unhappy, but they're wanting to switch careers. They want to join. They want to go from, let's say, a spirits company to an alcohol-free company, right? Should
Yeah.
they should they be using premium to see who's checking them out and to get some advanced features?
That depends on their financial situation, right? I think paying for it is nice, but I know one of the most I cherish her in our industry. She's a recruiter. She's a competitor of mine. She's fantastic. She's a great person. She doesn't pay for anything on LinkedIn, $0. But you know what? She's out there every day, multiple times a day on LinkedIn, building and growing her network. She's reaching out to her connects, right? And her followers every day.
That's amazing.
She pays zero, and I'm paying, I don't know, $200 or $300 a month for LinkedIn Recruiter.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I think it definitely helps. But, when you're in our industry, Duncan, we have so many trade shows, right? There's so many trade shows out there. And the good thing about that is those trade shows have phenomenal exhibitor lists. There's nothing preventing anybody that's in our industry going through those exhibitor lists and saying, hey, some of them have filters to break it down into categories. It could be dairy, it could be meat analogs, right? You can, just find these companies right in front of them, go after those companies via LinkedIn, go after the owner founders, go after the VPs, go after whoever you think you report to.
Is there, Scott, is there a tendency for people to get a little complacent with they're in a successful job, they're doing well, they're balancing their lives out, and they get a little complacent, and they don't continue to have, the kinds of conversations you're talking about. They're not
Mhm.
keeping their relationships up. And then the shit hits the fan, and suddenly they got to start reaching out to everyone. And I guess my
Yeah.
question to you is, if you're not building relationships and having conversations because you love to do it, it's a great risk management or business strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you should constantly be building relationships or at least keeping track of your past. What have I accomplished? What have I done? What are the accolades, right? So at least if I understand where are the feathers in the hat, what did I do well? Those are things that we can bring in, because let's face it, if it's sales in our industry, what does the buyer or the recruiter or the hiring manager want? They want your retailers, what brokers you've worked with, what distributors, end user operators. They want your customers, or they'll give us, if they say, hey, natural careers, we want you to recruit for somebody. Well, we want them to have Walmart, Target, BJ's, Costco, Wegmans, Safeway, Albertsons, Kroger, Whole Foods, Sprouts, right? So we know those customers. That's why it's imperative to you to have those customers on LinkedIn. Same in the marketing. Marketing's a little bit more difficult, but marketing, you're going to have direct reports. Marketing, you're going to have third parties. Nobody can do it by themselves. Digital, social, Who are those third parties? Name drop per se.
It's really interesting. So you look, so really like people have got, and it doesn't matter if they're sales, marketing, operations, whatever, they've got to be well-rounded. And again, I'm gonna come back to your earlier point, which just keeps gaining more relevance to me, is that you got to tell your story. And if there's gaps, you got to work on the gaps.
I agree. I look at it as that's what people are going to key in on, right? If there's any gap in your resume, be prepared to immediately articulate the reasoning in that in a short, succinct manner. Okay? There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. That's going to come up. I mean, everybody's going to ask about the gaps. I mean, when you're taught to be a recruiter or HR person, from day one, you're going to look at resumes and you're going to find gaps. And you're going to ask why, and it better be good, reasoning for such, right?
Scott, what do you see? And also a shout out to your partner, who's
Sarah Bruning. She's fantastic. On our website, we have all about it. And then we just did a post on LinkedIn. It has a picture of Sarah and I together. That we had I did the family photo for Christmas, and then we had Sarah and I did photos too with our photographer right after that.
Yeah, so it's your work family for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you and Sarah seeing in terms of like, the next 12 to 24 months? I mean, what's going to happen? I heard, I'm trying to think, I think it was David Mesa who said to me earlier last week that he's the people he's talking to, he runs a sales agency that helps brands. Okay. He's hearing that brands are wanting to take less risks with new brands. Like, what are you seeing from your perspective? What's happening in the industry?
I mean, let's face it, the brands are doing well, will continue to do well, but I feel that the next 12 to 24, maybe 36 months could be like what I call the great cleanse. There's all these brands you see at trade shows, maybe you see them on shelf and you're kind of scratching your head sometimes. How are they still in business? And let's face it, in the last year and a half, interest rates have tripled. The path to profitability has greatly decreased. If it's private equity run, I mean, it's 0 to 3 years now. It might have been 7 years plus. And, it's all about bottom line. Bottom line, not top line, not bolstering distribution. It's going to be profitability and being there, being very solid and thinking very hard about where you're going to spend money if you're going to be spending money. I was in a seminar in Boston, the Natural Products Consulting Institute. It's Bob Burke and John Bedore do a fantastic show for entrepreneurs every year. So they bring in 50, 60 entrepreneurs, and it's really teaching them CPG Natural Products 101, which I think is imperative for some of these small companies to go through. Don't make mistakes. Mistakes are super expensive. Can it hinder your company moving forward? Two of the days are more sales. One of the days is financing. The last day financing, there's somebody, her name is Ellie Truesdale. She's with O'Hare Partners. She's in the private equity venture capital world. Here's a stat. Now, you can't quote me on the stat, but it was 2020. There was 42,000 new SKUs in the CPG, okay? Fast forward into 2023, quarter ending, like say first or second quarter 2023, only 2,000. 40,000 less straight line SKUs. So that tells you one thing right there, that companies are not spending the money on new SKUs and innovation right now, which I think, talking about your friend before our call, on the marketing side, there's a lot of people sitting on the sideline in marketing, R&D and innovation too. Most companies aren't going to put the money towards it.
That's interesting. Skew-mageddon, almost.
I agree. Rationalization, right, at its best.
And I think it's interesting because there's a great guy that we've had as a guest on the podcast, Arshad Bal, and he you know him, Amrita Foods. And he's taken a very different path. He focuses in on profitability hardcore. And he backed away from some of the big retailers and built his own audience. And he's much more interested in a stable revenue as opposed to like, a sexy exit. He wants to have a healthy family life. He wants his employees to have a healthy family life. How much of that are you seeing?
Oh, I mean, I think it's all over, and I get these people that come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm looking for my next opportunity, and I'm looking for equity. I'm looking for equity. I'm looking for equity." And it's like, I've made countless millionaires on paper, but it never equated to more of the worth in the paper. And don't get me wrong, I made people tens of millions of dollars, companies that have exited in the hundreds of millions, approaching $1 billion mark, and people have gotten very wealthy over it. But the vast majority, not going to happen. A vast majority. You want to continue in the industry. I'd rather have a, more of a, legacy brand than I would a sprint. More of a marathon than a legacy. In this industry. So, I mean that's an anomaly where, I think that people should watch out. I think equity, that those transactions are probably a lot less right now. Unless you're really turning on all cylinders.
I mean, that's really interesting. We're talking to the founder of Yate, which is a yerba mate startup brand based out of LA. They're targeting the Red Bull drinkers at music events, and he was talking about guayaki, and oh my God, he said people say to him all the time, "It's an overnight success. You're going to be successful immediately," and he was like, "It's not an overnight success.
No, they've been around for 20 years.
20 years,
sure. Yeah."
Yep. And it's like schlepping. I mean, there's so much education involved, right? Like the South Americans had it right. That's a great drink. It's low sugar. You don't have to crash. And so it's interesting. So really, I love what you're saying there. I mean, for founders that are listening, and when I say listening, like with an open mind, it's like having a successful legacy brand, according to Scott, and I'm going to agree with you on this, is probably more likely than a sexy exit and you're going to the islands. I mean, the percentage of those stories is so freaking low. It's 0.00. So
and it's the same token that you said. Is some of your brands want to have, maybe yes, they want to have quality of life, and maybe they're going to go direct to consumer, right? The business is really profitable. They don't have to go. Retail is expensive. When you watch Shark Tank, you're just like, oh, we have a $5 million direct to consumer brand and we want to go retail. It's like, oh my goodness, why would you want to do that? Right. So you could do it, but I would rather have that small business choose your retailers or your channels sparingly, where you can allocate the money towards it, the resources towards it to be successful. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, one of our great friends, Ganesh Nair, who runs Karma Nuts, and he said, anyone starting a CPG brand better have 2 million to burn through, and that's just to survive and to get started.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh yeah.
Such an interesting stat there. What are you saying? Like, what would you say to people? Like we were talking about Jason earlier, what are you saying to those people today?
You mean people that are looking right now? They're sitting on the sideline?
Let's say, you said standing on the sideline or, thinking about making a transition.
I mean, look at the way that you're going about it. And everybody is going to hit their network first and foremost, right? We're going to call our friends. We're going to call people that we've worked with in the past. Depending on your industry, you're going to call your third parties. Maybe if you're a marketer, people social media. If you've had top-to-top calls with retailers, maybe you're calling category managers or buyers. So you're hitting that network. I think that then people have to decide, what do they want to do? Maybe it's what's in your refrigerator or what's in your pantry. What are some passion products out there? There's nothing preventing you from reaching out to those owner founders, from those VP of sales or marketers, or operations people. And then maybe where are your core skills? What categories are your skills in? Where do you focus in marketing? Is it brand? Is it innovation R&D? Is it shopper marketing, customer marketing? Really start focusing on some of the companies that maybe are successful doing that. Okay. And I think if it is category expertise, that makes the most sense. So going after that next, in my opinion, low hanging fruit. where can I be turnkey of jumping into that role, right? I think one of the big things, which you probably agree with me, people need to look at more fractional work, right? Working with a lot of the entrepreneurs that you talk to on a regular basis, because they can't afford paying, $10 or $20,000 a month for a high-powered marketer. Usually that doesn't happen until a brand's 20 or 30 million anyhow, where you really want to impose that pull strategy. I truly think that, you totally want somebody, that maybe you're only going to pay $5,000, to do a specific project. And if some of these people can get fractional work, maybe that takes us to the next rise.
Yeah,
right?
and I know people who do fractional work on a full-time basis. So they've got three or four, let's call them clients, or companies they're fractional with, and it's a healthy life. I mean, you've got some variety, and at the end of the day, if shit goes wrong in one place, you got the two or three others, and so I think that's a really, really interesting idea, and one that maybe isn't talked about enough. It's like, hey,
I agree. I mean, I do this with the massive amount of marketers that I'm talking to you right now. Even salespeople, I'm suggesting that, some of these people could be middle-aged. It's just a little bit more difficult for them. And I believe that there is ageism out there. I mean, there's no question about it. It gets to be more difficult. But then once again, we have to think outside of the box. We have to go at a different angle, right? And I think the big thing is, if you are going to do fractional, vet out your customers and to make sure you get paid money up front, right? I mean, that's where a lot of people okay, yeah, we'll give you $2,000 a month, but then they never pay them, So
listen,
that would be the big thing.
I got to tell you, we've done, I don't know how many episodes, over 110, 115 episodes. And this is some real talk here, because it happens to us too. It's like, hey, you have to look at how you're getting paid,
100%. When I do recruiting, my fees are low. But I mean, I want some money up front. That's just fair, because, I'm not going to run circles for anybody. And then all of a sudden them saying, oh, well, we filled it. Well, come on. I mean, I'm a professional. We're fantastic at what we do. But to get started, I'm not going to get rich off of it, but I want something to pay my team and my overhead at the end of the day.
I feel like it's a commitment piece. It's a commitment piece.
It is. It is a commitment, and we're working with one another. I mean, I want to be the right or left hand of a company and help them make some decisions. I believe that we bring a wrath of experience to help them prevent mistakes too, right?
It's like an engagement ring, ain't it, Scott?
It is an engagement. And if it's big, if it's a CEO search and it's something very C-suite, it's going to be a retainment, and then they can go and decide who's going to be the best suitor for them, right?
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love all the value, because we talk so much about founders, but I think it's important, for founders and leaders to know that this is the kind of stuff that people that are in transition are thinking about, and what should they be doing. So as you're a leader, and you say you're working with Scott, it's like, hey, these are the kinds of things that Scott's looking at, and these are the kinds of things that the people that you're interested in should be doing. It's like, do you really want a last minute networker, or do you want a consistent relationship builder? Do you want someone that's out there, because when they tell their story, they're telling your story too.
I agree. And, we have set up our website, the career transition side. If you don't want to do a resume, we'll do it for you. If you don't want to do your LinkedIn, we're going to do it for you. If you want a list of recruiters or private equity people in our industry, we have that. Okay. We have just about anything. That are probably a lot of avenues that you've not taken. Sure, we charge for it. We definitely have to monetize our time, but you can look at our recommendations on our LinkedIn profiles. I mean, it works. When you polish yourself, your background, your resume, your LinkedIn, it does get noticed, because when somebody's reviewing your resume, the first thing they're going to do is look for you on LinkedIn. They're going to click on your URL if you have that on there, for sure.
Scott, you inspired me. I want to approach a slightly uncomfortable topic. You
Okay.
know, um, there are a lot of founders out there who aren't going to make it, right?
I agree.
They got some real skills. They got courage. Maybe they got resilience. They got some all around talents, and it all goes south, right?
Yep.
What do you say to someone like that? Like, how do you
Great question. We've done this a number of times in recent days, right? Company goes under, or a company maybe sells. The founder didn't get enough money to retire. So they have to decide, that individual has to decide, what did they like doing the best out of the business? Of course, they're the chief bottle washer. They've done everything and anything. But what did you like? Was it sales? Was it working with Whole Foods? Was it marketing? Okay. Was it building the brand and getting the brand, and having some lift in the brand? Or maybe it was operations. So I think what you're going to find is people do have things that they like to do versus that they didn't like to do. And what we do is we focus the business on that. Okay. We don't necessarily have to say that I was the owner and founder. You could be the head of sales for XYZ company, right? And we're finding that works. People are able to get picked up by other companies in working in those specialties down the line. Because when you're running a small business like you and I are, you're handling everything. You have to be almost a master at everything at the end of the day. So, these people can work with very limited resources in every facet of the business, which makes them versatile
and valuable. Yeah. And
I agree.
They're usually scrappy. I mean, I know I'm scrappy, but you're scrappy.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you gotta be able to, sugarcoat unpleasant things. You gotta be clear. You gotta be transparent. You gotta build relationships, like you say, every day. I mean,
every day.
It's interesting. I just wonder if you've heard of the book. I think it's called Beautiful Questions.
No.
I'll have to send it to you. It was fascinating because they talked about how to close open-ended questions and open closed-ended questions, and then take the questions to the next level, because questions are such a valuable part of conversations, right? I mean, unless you got people that aren't listening to each other at all, questions are so important. And I feel like I'm pretty sure it's the Book of Beautiful Questions, but
I wrote it down. I will look it up.
I mean, and I was going to say to you, it seems like questions are, I don't do it enough, but questions should be part of our LinkedIn strategy too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we will do, like an interview preparation, right? So when it's your turn to ask questions, you need to be prepared. And 4 to 6 questions. I think the number one question somebody can ask during an interview is, who are you looking for? What are the top 2 or 3 characteristics that you're looking for in this role? Maybe we can drive a little bit of culture and day-to-day in the job. I also like people to think about it for behavioral questions. There's no right or wrong answer for behavioral questions. They're situational. Give me an example. Tell me about a time. How would you react? And the thing is, I tell people to think about their past. Think about accolades or accomplishments where, utilizing the STAR method. This isn't my method. What was the situation or the task? What was the action that you did to overcome that situation, task, or problem? And then what were the quantifiable results? Think about it in terms of leadership. Think about it in terms of communication or conflict resolution. What you're going to find is when you write those examples out, I like people to write it down. Write their case study down of the STAR method. What was the situation, task, problem? What was the action that you did to overcome that? What were the quantifiable results? And what you're going to find is your example is going to answer a lot of those questions, right? Examples that you've written down.
I mean, listen, we got to do this again, because this has been power packed, and so many great points.
I have lots to say, as you know, Duncan. I could probably write a book. And being a recruiter in the industry in the last 20 years, wow, there are some characters in the industry. Let's just put it that way.
I love it. I mean, some of my key takeaways are, conversations are everything. Keep having them all the time. Build relationships. Tell your story. Founders can fail. What's your, I mean, listen, I went on.
You pivot.
Yeah. I went on Jason Swank's podcast and I said, I burned the damn boat, so I can't go back. But in reality, if you lose the battle, we're not Vikings, so you do have to have. The importance of culture fit, the importance of questions, conflict resolution. Man, you have been incredible, and this is going to be such a wonderful episode.
I enjoyed it.
Such a wonderful episode. Thank you so much. Not only for coming on the show today and generously giving your time, but thank you for what you do. I mean, and gosh, you were really kind of born to do this, because I mean, the whole farm experience is incredible. Like, how many people can say I started on a farm? And that's
this is not my terminology. This is my wife's aunt. She's like, no one outworks a Midwest farmer. And that's hers. I've kind of taken it my own. Now, I wasn't a dairy farmer. We were beef farmers. So there is that. Dairy farmers are the creme de la creme. You're getting up at 4:30 in the morning. You're doing it, but we did it, and it was a fun upbringing for parents that were white collar people. So it was an interesting upbringing. So
I mean, this has been really great. We've been talking to Scott Rice, founder and CEO of Natural Careers, and again, shout out to his partner. And I really think this has been a fantastic conversation, Scott. We'd love to have you back. Thank you once again.
I'd love to be back. Thanks, Duncan. I appreciate your time.
Incredible insights. Thank you. This has been another episode of the Firebelly Social Show, a special episode and a very valuable episode where we interview leaders and founders of mission-driven food and beverage brands. And today has been great. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Firebelly Social Show. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.